piece of white matter we just got done talking about. So as you cut it in half, you'll have this, see this white line right here? Right on top is the corpus callosum. I'm going to skip a couple because on top is the corpus callosum, and then right underneath it, this line right here, is your fornix. We got corpus callosum, fornix. And you see this little film right here, that little membrane? I mention it because I'll go to the other section and you don't see it. That membrane's missing here. Well, that film is my septum pellucidum. When you cut it, you'll get it on the septum pellucidum on one half and not the other. That's the membrane that separates, kind of helps to separate our two hemispheres, but also the lateral ventricles. So it separates our two lateral ventricles from each other. In behind this membrane will be a space, the lateral ventricle. On top of the corpus callosum, you'll see this little strip of gray matter. Kind of follows right alongside of the corpus callosum, this little strip of gray matter right here. That's the cingulate gyrus. It's part of the limbic system. That's the cingulate gyrus right there. Okay, so you'll be able to see that right above the corpus callosum. From there we go to the diencephalon. This whole region right here is the diencephalon, made up of the thalamus, the epithalamus, and the hypothalamus. The thalamus, as you kind of make it out here, this little circular region right here, that's the thalamus. Above that, you have the pineal gland, this piece right here, which is your epithalamus.
You said the pineal gland is the epithalamus?
Yes.
Alright.
And then below the thalamus, this region right here is my hypothalamus. This little small, kind of semi-rectangular region is my hypothalamus. So we got the thalamus, the epithalamus, and the hypothalamus. In the middle of the thalamus, you see this little dark spot right there? Right there. See that? That's the intermediate mass. That is, sometimes it's very difficult to distinguish. So it's right, that little discolored spot right there in the middle. Okay, around the thalamus, see the space right here? Kind of the best way to look at it, between the fornix and the thalamus, this space is the third ventricle. Now also, within these ventricles, you'll be looking inside there and there'll be this black or brown stuff in there. See that stuff I'm peeling out? Right there? That's the choroid plexus. Okay, don't rip it completely out, just push it back in. There. So the space is the third ventricle. That stuff in there is the choroid plexus, which helps to produce the CSF in all of these ventricles. Now from there, so let's go back down to the hypothalamus real quick. Still see? So again, here's our hypothalamus. At the base of our hypothalamus, we have two major structures. The front of the hypothalamus at the base is the optic chiasma. The posterior side of the hypothalamus is this little bulbous structure called the mammillary bodies. Okay, so you can identify those two parts there. Now from there we go to the brainstem. First part of the brainstem is the midbrain. The midbrain is a large section. It starts here and goes to about here. This whole area is part of the midbrain. And there's a lot of structures you see there that are listed part of the midbrain. You see the channel that runs through it? That's the cerebral aqueduct. Runs through the center of the midbrain, connecting the third ventricle to the fourth ventricle down below it. Now, in front of the cerebral aqueduct, this region of the midbrain are called the cerebral peduncles. So below or in front of the cerebral aqueduct, we have the cerebral peduncles. Above the cerebral aqueduct, we have two parts, the inferior and the superior colliculus. Inferior, superior colliculus. Now you also look in here and it says corpora quadrigemina. What does that mean? What is quadrigemina? Yeah, 4 parts. When the brain's together and whole, and I pull back the fissure, see a little button there? You can see all 4 of those together. The left and right superior and the left and right inferior colliculi together make the corpora quadrigemina. Now when you're only looking at one side, of course you're not going to say corpora quadrigemina because all you have is an inferior and a superior colliculus. So make sure you differentiate those. In behind the midbrain, we have this region. You can see where it kind of swells a little bit right here. This is the pons. And then behind the pons, we have the medulla oblongata. And then the space between the brainstem and the cerebellum is the 4th ventricle. Should be able to identify that as well. As we look at the cerebellum, see the white branching, the white matter, the branches, arbor vitae. And then the folia and fissures. Keep this separate because if we look at the ridges and shallow grooves on the cerebrum, what's a ridge called? A gyrus. And what's a shallow groove? A sulcus. On our cerebellum, a ridge is a folia. A groove is a fissure. So make sure you distinguish between cerebrum and cerebellar structures, ridges and valleys. All right, so those are the main